quote recently, super accurate quote, it's really true psychologically, and it says, comparison is the thief of joy. Now, the reason this is true is because it doesn't matter how amazing you are, doesn't matter how rich you are, doesn't matter how fit you are, doesn't matter how anything of those things that you are, there's always going to be someone that has more of that thing than you do. There's always going to be someone with more awesomeness than you have. So we tend to be around those circles and we think, I'm good, and then you get around with other people and you're like, oh my God, I'm not as good as that. And then you start diminishing your own value and diminishing your own success. And by the way, this is true for like all of us throughout history. Like, humans have always done this. For example, I remember being a kid and I loved Legos as a kid. Like, it was my favorite, toy, favorite thing I loved to do. Legos were absolutely my favorite. And I remember my mother, I don't remember why or what caused it, but you used to be able to get, to tell you how much times have changed, you used to be able to get like a box of Legos for $4.99. And it, like, that box would be a thing you could make with the Legos. For example, it could be a car, it could be a taxi cab, it could be a helicopter, but the box would, and my mother bought me one of those boxes. Those don't exist now. Like, now Legos are incredibly expensive, but back then, my mother bought me one of those boxes, and I was so thrilled, so excited. I couldn't have been happier, and I ripped the box open, and I start playing with my Legos and putting it together. And then when I had it all put together, it was a police car. I went to one of my, I don't know, I was like 8 years old. I went to one of my neighbors, one of my friend's house who lives close to me, and he had like the entire Star Wars Millennium Falcon. And I mean, he just had this crazy setup. And all of a sudden, I was less pleased with what I had. That's a human phenomenon. And I want to talk about how social media drives that and how like this comparison culture is a problem and only fueled by social media. So welcome back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie. Now, thinking back to that story I just shared, was 100% true. I put my little police car thing together, and I go over to my buddy's house and notice that he's got the entire Star Wars everything, and all of a sudden I'm less pleased with my toy. Well, that's kind of life these days. Like, when you work really hard and you are successful at the thing you're trying to do, like I'm trying to lose 30 pounds, and you're like, all right, I'm doing good. Well, now, instead of like going to your neighbor's house, now it's like coming to you 24/7 in massive amounts. So as I'm trying to lose 20 pounds, you see the person with the six-pack abs, and you see the person, and it's like, it's really, really hard to feel successful. I'm so glad that I came of age before social media, because during some of my darkest times, if I'm being really honest, I sometimes wonder if I would have survived, because it was so easy to like compare yourself to other people. And I remember this one time, I was really in a dark, difficult place, and I was struggling to get through college, and college was by far the biggest test for me in my undergrad years, because I didn't have any money. So it made like simple tasks like buying books to study for classes and that sort of stuff really challenging and really difficult. And then there was a guy that I knew in college, and he had graduated a couple years before me, and he got this huge signing bonus to sign for some company, or huge at the time. I think it was like $7,000, but like unbelievably huge for me to hear about at the time. And they gave him a company car, and I was sleeping on my aunt's couch with like nothing. And like, I heard that, and I remember feeling like an absolute loser. But before you know it, I could just put it out of my mind and get back to work. But in the world we live in today, like, you'd see it on social media, and you would do all those things, and it makes it really, really challenging. So what do we do about that? Like, I'm going to tell you something really, really simple. I practice this to this very day. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I'm telling you it helps you. Only follow pages and content that inspire you. If you want to jump out of comparison culture, then only follow content that does not make you look at yourself worse. Only follow content that drives you, inspires you, uplifts you. If you're following content that makes you feel worse about yourself, if you're following content that makes you angry, frustrated, irritated, then that's on you. Like, you have to take control of what you consume and stop following the things that make you compare yourself in negative ways and look down on you. It is very important that you take control of how you view yourself, and this is the number one way to do it. So seriously, right now, go and unfollow any page, any content. I don't care how close you are to that person. I don't care unfollow any page or any content that makes you feel less about you. A lot of us, if not all of us, we have a habit to open our social media accounts and start scrolling, and then we compare ourselves to the best of what we see in other people. So you see other people's success and you're like, I wish that were me. I wish that could be me. You see their lifestyle, you see what they're doing, you see their trips and their travel, and we compare ourselves to that, and we're like, oh, my life doesn't look like that. And that has a super negative impact on your mental health. That has a very terrible impact on how you view yourself and how you conduct yourself. And we need to kind of learn ways to not do that. But we all do it. We look on social media and you see the car that the person bought and you just think, man, I wish I could have that car. You see the lifestyle that they have and you're like, man, I wish I could have that lifestyle. And we have to develop new habits. We have to stop comparing ourselves negatively to other people's successes. And I'm gonna share two things today that I think could help with this tremendously, actually. I think it can make a big, massive difference if you allow yourself to kind of lean in to this way of being and this way of thinking. And it's really, really challenging for a lot of us sometimes. It's really, really hard, but I think it's critical. I think it's incredibly important, and it's a skill we need to share. So I'm going to talk about it today. So I travel a lot, and not too long ago, I was in an airport. I saw these girls, and I don't know how old they were. Let's just say 20, somewhere around there. One of them asked one of her friends to take a picture of her. And I remember her saying, head to toe, I want to get the whole fit. And she must have felt like she was looking cute that day. And I watched them, and she probably posed, no exaggeration, 100 times. It was very obvious that she was trying to find a place in the airport where the lighting was perfect and her makeup was perfect and everything was perfect. And she probably posed literally the exact same spot in different ways and angles, had her friend move around, all these things, and took 100 different pictures. Literally, no exaggeration. Also, she could post once on Instagram. And I remember watching that and thinking, there are people looking at this, just thinking you're just a flawless person. But the truth is, what you're going to see is the absolute very best, the manipulated best from all of the other people. It's not really who they are, it's who they're portraying to be. It's literally the manipulation of this social media app. I'm sure she's going to use filters and all those things. So people see that, and then they start her skin is flawless. But the truth is, it's being impacted by all of the effort that went into making it. It's being impacted by all of those things. And I think we have to remember that. Most of what we see on social media is a lie. It's not transparent. It's not the truth. The other thing that's really important to remember about social media is you don't see the meaningful stuff. For example, when you see someone that just took a trip on vacation, you don't see the credit card debt they went into to take that trip. You don't see the interest rates they're paying to take that trip. You don't see, and even to say something positive, you don't see the hard work that they use to save the money to take that trip. All you're seeing is the trip. And there's something about our brains that make us think they're getting to go on that trip because they're lucky or they're fortunate. But really, they just worked really hard. Or maybe they're taking a trip that's a little bit beyond their means. I know tons of people that take trips that are way beyond their means. And they buy cars that are way beyond their means. And they shop and they do things that are way beyond their means. I see it constantly. And it's really important that we acknowledge that, because it's not the trip. You're making decisions I can't go on that trip because I can't afford it. That's a good, solid decision that you should not feel bad about. You should not even second guess. Someone else might make a decision to say, I'm just going to put it on a credit card and pay it off. Be comfortable with who you are and the path that you've chosen. That's the only way to combat this comparison culture that we live in And it is the best way to take care of your mental health. So get solid in who you are and why you're making decisions, and stop assuming. And here's the thing. We assume that everybody's doing something on social media, they're using the same rubric of decision making that we're using. So when you see someone that took a trip to Bali, they must have been able to afford it because I wouldn't have gone if I couldn't afford it. And the truth is, that ain't accurate. That's not accurate at all. A lot of people do things that they can't afford because they're trying to impress people on social media. Remember, not every decision you see being represented on social media was a good one. Not everything you see on social media is the truth. In the early part of my life, obviously, there was no social media, wasn't invented yet. I totally had a habit of comparing myself to everybody, all of my peers, all of the people around me. I just had a tendency to think like everybody's life was better than mine. And I assumed that was the way things would be. And I assumed that's the way things would be forever. Like I remember growing up in Boston and knowing that my house just had so much turmoil in it. I remember going to class, like going to school and thinking everyone's life was better than mine. Like they all get to go home to a loving household. They all get to go home to loving families. They all get to go home to like a warm environment. I just never once assumed that anyone else was struggling. And looking back now, like, I mean, that's crazy. Like that's not reality. But at the time, like, I just never assumed that anybody was going through any of the craziness that I was going through. And it had a drastic impact on my mental health. It had a drastic impact on my life. And today, I want to have a conversation about how it impacted me and what I did about it. The easiest thing for me to say is it was very detrimental to my mental health. Like it was a huge struggle to my mental health to just assume that everyone was doing far better than me on every level. And the consequence was twofold. Number one, I felt alone. I felt isolated. And trust me when I say this, if you want to make your mental health worse, take whatever you're struggling with and then put isolation onto it. So I assumed that like I was broken. I was tainted. I was wrong. I was not good or not of good quality. Like I really assumed that. Like that's literally how I lived my life. It's not kind of how I lived my life. It's not maybe how I lived my life. Like that was literally the way that I lived every single day. Like there was something wrong with me and there was not something wrong with everybody else. In fact, everybody else had it all figured out and I was the broken one. The other thing that it did that was really difficult is it like killed my ambition, my creativity. It looked like I was lazy. And not because I was actually lazy, but it looked like I was lazy because I wasn't doing anything. And I wasn't doing anything because I didn't see the point. Like if you genuinely believe that you are not good and you genuinely believe that you're not going to accomplish or achieve everything, then you develop this sense of like, what's the point of doing anything? And I absolutely will admit I had that sense of like, what's the point? I will absolutely tell you, it very much felt like, why even bother? Why even try? I'm not going to ever amount to anything. The world is never going to turn in my favor. And it's going to always be bad for me. And when you're thinking like that, like you don't learn to like run your race. You don't learn to like focus on your journey. You don't learn to focus on who you want to become and what you're trying to accomplish. But eventually, the best thing I ever did was move to Texas. Not that I love Texas. Anybody who knows me knows that is not the case. But all of a sudden I was like, the people I grew up around were no longer around me. I was 19 years old and I could like focus. It's the only way I can describe it. I can focus on who I was becoming and who I wanted to become and no longer start comparing myself to other people. And that's actually when my life changed and that's how it changed. Now, I'm not saying that in order to for you guys to have that transformation, you've got to move somewhere, move to Texas. But I am saying you have to learn how to focus on you, not be distracted by the people that have been around you for a long time, and just really lock in and focus on you. Once I did that, my entire life began to change. So what I want you guys to realize is the most important thing you can ever do is focus on where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. That level of focus will completely change your life. So yesterday, I talked about how important it is to focus on yourself And I talked about how important it is to not be distracted by what other people are doing and what they have. I'll tell you a really quick story on why that is super important. When I was growing up, like I said yesterday, I genuinely believed that everybody's life was better than mine. It didn't even dawn on me for a nanosecond that somebody else had it worse than me, or at least was dealing with similar things. Not once ever. It literally never crossed my mind. I know that sounds crazy. I know that's whatever, but it's the truth. It just never would have hit me that anyone else was struggling in the ways that I was struggling. And then as I got into adulthood, I went to an event with my childhood best friend, and there were all these people there. And this girl told me, I told her that I was in graduate school. At the time I was in graduate school, so this is in the early 2000s. And she said, "Oh, what are you studying?" And I said, I'm going to become a psychotherapist. And she said to me, "Oh, that's really cool. I've been in therapy for years." And I was like, "Years? Really? Like, when did it start?" She said, "When I was a kid." Now, this was one of those people that I thought had it all figured out. White picket fenced home, big house, wealthy parents, or certainly wealthy compared to the life that I was leading. I just couldn't fathom. Even now, at this point, I was in adulthood. It's like I couldn't fathom that she'd be struggling in this way. And she tells me that she's struggled with depression nearly her whole life. And I was like, whoa. So other people have problems that you can't see. So it's important that you not be distracted by those things. However, noticing other people is not inherently bad. And I want to make sure I make this point really clear. You don't have to just focus to the point where you're just ignoring other things around you, because sometimes seeing what other people are doing can have a massive impact on your life in a positive way. And I want to share that today. And I think it's really important. Like, you can notice what other people are doing, because then their accomplishments will inspire you. I have a really good friend. His name is Matthew. You've heard me talk about Matthew on the podcast a lot. Matthew is a brilliant, brilliant guy. And he's an attorney. He's a prosecuting attorney in Fort Worth, Texas. Very, very smart. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm dumb. I don't think I'm dumb. But like, academic intelligence doesn't come as easily to me as it came to Matthew. And we went to undergrad together, and we were majoring in the same thing. We were majoring in psychology as undergrad. And it was very common that I would be like staying up all night studying, and I would work really hard. And on the day of the test, I'd walk into class and I'd be like, "Matt, how'd you study?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I studied for a while, then I fell asleep." And I literally would have been up like all night just cramming as much information into my head as possible. And he always beat me. You know, he'd get a 94 on a test and I'd get an 89, or he'd get a 96 and I'd get a 92. But he always beat me. I would watch him and it would just inspire me. It would like trigger that like competitive thing. Like, I want to beat Matthew. But here's the thing. I never wanted Matthew to get lower grades. Like, I never was like, "Oh, I hope he gets a 70 this time so then I can get, a 90. I always wanted Matthew to get an A or 95 or whatever. I just wanted to beat him. It inspired me. In some ways, Matthew showed me what was possible because he was better than me. But it drove me to work hard and try to catch him. And the truth is, I'm not sure I ever caught him. But he's been an inspiration. Matthew bought a car before I did. He bought an Eagle Talon, which was a super cool kind of 2-seater thing. I don't know if you guys remember that. I don't think they make them anymore, but he bought an Eagle Talon, and he's just the kind of guy. Matthew, at one point, he would take his fitness seriously. Matthew's by nature kind of a slender guy, but he would like, "I'm going to work out." And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to work out too," because he drives me, inspires me. He makes me want to be a better version of me. Now, if you get so laser focused and locked in, you just don't notice anything around you, then you sacrifice your ability to be inspired, and nothing really happens around you that drives you to be a better version of you. So yes, you got to focus on yourself, but that means don't be distracted in a negative way by what other people are doing to make it knock you off the path that you are trying to walk, but instead be the best version of you so that you can lock in. And sometimes that requires you to notice what other people are doing, because they will inspire you and show you what is possible. And if you are not surrounded by people that inspire you, you need a new circle. So I want you to look around your life and just see, like, who in my life inspires me, and just think about what they inspire you to do. I went to high school with this guy. I probably shouldn't say his name. Let's call him Chris. Chris was a loner and wasn't very popular, wasn't very cool. if we can use that phrase. Didn't sit at the right, table in the cafeteria. Was very isolated, and that was just Chris's, high school experience. Then, after high school, I don't remember where I was, but I was like in another state, in another city. Went to high school in Massachusetts, and I was in another state, in another city, and I ran into Chris. Now, if you're old enough to remember, the world before social media, you didn't see anybody online. There was no online. When you ran into somebody that you knew from high school, even if you weren't friends in high school, you were like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. And he approaches me. He's like, hey, Elliott. And I'm like, hey, Chris, how have you been? And he was outgoing, and he was clearly a more uplifted version of himself. And we talked for a few minutes. We weren't friends in high school. I knew of him, he knew of me, but we weren't friends in high school. We talked for a few minutes, and then that was that. But in that few-minute interaction, I asked him, man, you didn't say this many words the whole time we were in high school. What's changed? His answer to that question has impacted me tremendously, and I never forgot it. And it's relevant to our topic that we're talking about, comparing themselves. So I'm going to share his answer and why it matters. What he said was, I came out. And I said, came out? He said, yeah, I came out as gay. I went to college. He told me the college he went to. And he said, I came out as gay, and I realized that there was a whole community of people that were just like me, and it was like I kind of came out of my shell. And he went on to say, when he was in Massachusetts, he just felt like he was the only one. He was isolated and alone, and it was how hard it was for him. And I just thought, so many of us, we compare ourselves to other people and think that we are different and they're normal. I certainly did it. This guy, Chris, did it. And tons of clients over the years have done it. Chris then went to college and realized, I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of people just like me, and we can have a community, and we can be ourselves around one another. And it literally changed his personality and the way he conducts himself in the world. Over the years, I cannot tell you how many times people have compared themselves to other people, and they assume they have more money than me, higher credit scores, bigger houses, better kids, all of the things that tell them there's something wrong with me and everybody else is normal. And then they behave as if that's true. What I want people to do when you're making that kind of comparison is kind of twofold. There are two things you need to do to be able to free yourself of that kind of dynamic. The first one is be your authentic self no matter what. You've got to really understand that the victory is in being yourself. The freedom is in being yourself and not being held back by other people, and certainly not what you think other people might have or might not have. Don't let yourself be held back by the comparison to I think I'm this, but everybody else is better. Truly, honestly, be your authentic self. And then the second part of that is understand that other people are just like you. You are not alone. That isolated feeling of being alone comes from that inability we have for us to accurately compare ourselves to other people. So think about that for a minute. Human beings are actually very bad at comparing ourselves to other people because we compare the worst of ourselves, or at least the perceived worst of ourselves, to the perceived best of other people. And the truth is, we're not really accurate on either accord. So don't allow yourself to be held back by other people, and understand everybody else is just like you. Everybody else has the same flaws, same troubles, same issues, same things that bother them. And when you can know that, and I mean truly know that, then you can become free. So make sure you do those two things. Be your authentic self no matter what, and understand that everything that you're struggling with, everybody else is struggling with too. Thanks for being here. If you wouldn't mind doing me a super huge favor, I would love it if you would share this podcast with at least one person in your life that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. And also follow me on all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can search for my name, Elliott Connie, or @Elliott Speaks. That's my handle across all platforms. Can't wait to see you tomorrow.